sound like that in my life. It wasn't a bark, and it wasn't a howl. It was more like the creak of a rusted door blown by the wind, weak, broken, yet piercing straight into my chest. A cry without words, nothing but ragged breaths, as if life itself was clawing to hold on to its last fragments. I stopped. My wooden cane froze against the gravel. My heart seized. It felt as though a cold hand had gripped my collar, forcing me to halt, to listen. I turned my head, my clouded old eyes searching for the sound in the narrow gap between two cracked brick walls. And then I saw it. A Doberman puppy, no more than a month old, skin and bones. Its ribs jutted out like rusted iron bars, its belly caved in like a hollow wound. A coarse rope cut into its thin neck, tied cruelly to the rusted bar of a broken gate. Its short coat, once meant to shine brown and black, was matted with dust and dried blood. Its ears drooped, trembling, and its eyes, far too large for its face, were dulled, as though it had long since stopped expecting anything from this world. And then I saw it, at the corner of its eye, a tear. A single tear slides down its gaunt cheek, leaving the only trace of wetness on its dry face. It didn't howl. It didn't scratch. It didn't fight. It only wept. A muffled, silent weeping, as though apologizing for still being alive. My chest tightened. I, Martin Green, a 67-year-old widower who had lived quietly for more than a decade since my wife passed, thought I had grown numb to loss, to loneliness. But looking into those eyes, I felt a pain rawer than human grief. It was absolute abandonment, a small soul forced to vanish from this world unnoticed. I knelt, my knees pressing into the hard ground, my trembling hand bracing against the brick wall. "Dear God," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Who could do this?" The question slipped out like a confession. I reached my hand toward it, slowly. But as my shadow touched its face, the puppy only lowered its head further, avoiding my gaze. No resistance, no growl, just a quiet submission, like a fading shadow. I felt it clearly. It no longer had the strength even to fear. Someone had stolen its bark, its instinct to defend itself, leaving only emptiness. I drew my hand back as though I had committed an unforgivable sin. I looked around. The alley lay still. The smell of damp garbage clung to the hot air. No footsteps. No explanation. Only the puppy and that frayed rope. My heart pounded. My mind screamed, "If you walk away, it will die." Right here, in silence. And in that instant I knew. I couldn't. I hurried home, chest tight as if squeezed by an iron fist. In the kitchen I grabbed what I could, a scrap of shredded chicken bread, a bottle of water, and the old wool scarf my wife had knit when she was still alive. I had kept it tucked away for years, too afraid to touch it. This time, I carried it with me. When I returned, it was still there, in the same posture, as if the outside world had nothing to do with it. I set the bread and water down, sliding them gently through the gap. I whispered, "Hey, kid, nobody's going to hurt you. Eat a little." It sniffed, eyes locked on me, trembling. But it didn't eat. It only stared, its gaze saying, "I don't believe anymore. I don't wait anymore. I only cry." In that moment, my breath caught. It was like standing before a candle about to burn out, knowing that without shelter, it would vanish. I placed the wool scarf by its feet, whispering as if to an old friend, "Don't give up, kid." Not today, but as I rose and turned to leave, my chest ached with a sharp pain. Because I knew bread and water alone wouldn't save it. Death was sitting beside it already, counting each shallow breath. And if I didn't do more, I would carry that image with me to my grave. That night, in my silent house, I didn't sleep. The clock ticked, each beat echoing like that broken cry in my head. I stood by the window, staring down into the dark alley. I could almost hear it still, that fractured breathing cutting through the night, squeezing my chest. I laid my hand on my wife's photo on the table and whispered, "Margaret, if you were here, you wouldn't leave it behind." Tears welled, and I knew, come morning, I would return. That would be the beginning of a story I myself could not yet imagine. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight slipped through the curtains, I was already on my feet. I hadn't slept a wink. The weak cries of that Doberman pup still scraped against my heart, like a dull knife cutting slowly and unendingly. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone and dialed 911. When the operator answered, my voice came out hoarse. "Listen. There's a puppy, barely a month old, tied up and starved. It's dying." The operator's voice was flat, detached. "Exact address, sir?" I swallowed hard, forcing myself to be calm. "End of Maple Street, behind the broken brick wall next to the abandoned house. Please, it doesn't have much time." "Noted. We'll pass it on." "Anything else, sir?" I froze. No comfort, no urgency, just words read from a script. I shouted, "Listen to me. If no one comes, it will die today." "We've logged your report, sir. Please keep the line clear." Click. The line went dead, cold. I gripped the phone tight. My heart pounded like a hammer. Was that the world's answer to a fragile life? A hollow line in a system log? I sank into the chair, chest filled with ice. But then those clouded eyes returned to my mind. Eyes too large for such a thin face. I knew I couldn't sit still. I needed more. I needed someone beside me. I took my cane and stepped into the hall, knocking on the door next to mine. Claire, a 28-year-old nurse, lived there. When she opened, her face still worn from the night shift, I could only manage, "Claire, there's a puppy. It's dying behind the wall at the end of the street." She frowned. "Are you sure? I pass there every day. I've never seen anything because it doesn't bark," I whispered. "It only cries." Something shifted in her eyes. Maybe she understood. In the hospital, she had seen patients too weak to call out, clinging to life with nothing but shallow breaths. She nodded. "Take me there." On the way, I stopped by Linda's bakery. She was 62, a woman who knew every bit of news in the neighborhood. When I told her, she set down a tray of steaming rolls and sighed, "Dear Lord, I'm coming too." We returned to the alley. The early wind carried the smell of damp and decay. Claire shone her flashlight through the gap in the wall, and when the beam caught the pup, she covered her mouth. "Oh God, it's so small. It's just trembling." I nodded, tears stinging. "It cried like that all night." Linda's hand pressed my shoulder, her voice steady. "Martin, we can't leave it there." Not like this, I knelt again, sliding the last of the chicken bread and the bottle of water inside. The puppy lifted its head, looked at me once more. Still no eating, just staring. That look, a voiceless plea, tore my chest open. Claire spoke softly. "We need to call a rescue team." "The police won't make it in time." I nodded. "I'll call." Just then, a truck rumbled in the distance, then faded away. The alley returned to dead silence. But I understood. This silence was no longer an ending. It had turned into a command in my heart. Do something. Now. As we rose to leave, Linda muttered, anger and pity tangled in her voice. "Cruel, Who could tie up a small creature like that and leave it like garbage? I clenched my cane, my voice shaking but firm. People can pretend not to hear, not to see. But I heard, and I won't stay silent. That night, I didn't sleep again. I paced the living room, opened the window to the empty street below. I thought I heard its cry weaving through the wind. I sat at the table, touched my late wife's photo, and whispered, "Margaret, what would you do if you were here?" Tears came, and I knew the answer was clear. She would fight to the end for a fragile life. The next morning, I called a local animal rescue group directly. As I described what I had seen, they hesitated, then said, "We'll send someone right away, sir. Stay with the puppy and don't let anyone move it." I hung up, my heart pounding. For the first time in 2 days, I saw a sliver of light in the dark. That puppy was no longer alone. This time I would return, not as a lonely old man. I would go with Claire and Linda, and together we would not let it cry in silence another night. That afternoon, the sun poured mercilessly into the alley, light slicing across the peeling walls like blades against the eyes. I leaned on my cane, heart pounding, gaze fixed on the gap in the bricks where the Doberman pup still huddled. He hadn't moved, breaths flickering like a candle about to go out. The sound of an engine slowed, then stopped. A faded blue pickup rolled up. 2 strangers stepped out, but their eyes were steady. Mike, a broad-shouldered young man with his sleeves rolled, and Tanya, tall, hair tied back, carrying a medical pack. "You Martin?" Mike asked, his voice urgent. "I am. He's still alive, but barely," I rasped. Tanya was already on her knees, shining a flashlight into the crack. "Dear God," she whispered. "A month old, and this thin?" She turned to me. "We don't have much time." Mike pulled out a bolt cutter. "The gate's locked. We'll have to break it." I nodded sharply, though my hand trembled. "Do it!" Metal screeched as he clamped down on the rusty lock, but just then, a hinge groaned. The door of the abandoned house beside the alley swung open. A man shuffled out, greasy hair plastered to his head, torn shirt clinging to him, eyes sunken with fatigue. "What are you doing here?" he barked, his glare sweeping over us. Tanya rose, stepping in front of me and Claire. "Is this your dog?" He glanced toward the wall, shrugged. "Yeah, mine." Linda, silent until now, erupted. "Yours? It's starving to death out here. How long since you fed it?" The man looked away, muttering, "I didn't know what to do with it." My blood boiled. I stepped forward, cane striking the ground, locking eyes with him. "Didn't know what to do? So you tied a small life to rusted iron and left it to die? That isn't ignorance. That's cruelty." He narrowed his eyes, shifting toward us. But Claire held up her phone, camera recording. "You touch anyone here, and this video goes straight to the police." The air tightened, stretched thin as wire. He froze, muttered a curse under his breath, then stepped back into the shadows. Mike turned, jaw tight. "This lock still needs breaking." "Do it," I said firmly. Snap! The lock shattered with a crack like a gunshot, blasting apart the silence. Tanya shoved the gate open, a rush of rust and dust flooding out. The puppy was still curled in the corner, rope cutting deep into his neck. Tanya knelt, her voice softening. "Hey, little one, we're here now. No one will hurt you again." I dropped beside her. The pup lifted dull eyes to us, caught between fear and surrender. My hand shook as I steadied his head, feeling each fragile breath. "Careful. He may panic," Claire warned. "No," I whispered, eyes locked on him. "He hasn't the strength left to fear." Tanya cut through the rope, then slid the wool scarf I'd carried beneath his body. When the last strand fell away, I lifted him into my arms. His weight was terrifyingly light, like holding ashes, but his body burned with fever, trembling. "Hold on, kid. I've got you now. No one's leaving you again," I murmured. Mike cleared the path. Claire readied a portable oxygen tank. Linda reached into her basket, pressing a warm roll into my pocket. "When he's strong enough, give him this. He deserves to know what sweetness tastes like." As we carried him out of the alley, I heard the man mutter from the shadows, "You're just bringing trouble on yourselves." I turned back, meeting his eyes. "If saving a small life is trouble, then I'll carry that burden the rest of my days." He lowered his head, silent. We broke into the street. Mike's pickup waited. I held the pup tight, feeling his frantic breaths. My vision blurred until there was nothing left but this truth. We were racing death itself. "Get in!" Tanya shouted. "We're taking him to Dr. Carter's clinic, 10 minutes away!" I climbed in, clutching the trembling bundle. The door slammed, my heart pounding wildly. I knew every second ahead would decide between life and death. And I knew, too, I would never forget the moment I carried him through that rusted gate. The first moment Valor, the name I whispered in my heart, was free. I carried the puppy in my arms and hurried into the old pickup. His tiny body shook uncontrollably, burning with fever, yet so light I feared a single jolt might shatter him. Mike fired up the engine. Tires screeched against asphalt, the sound echoing through the alley. I sat in the passenger seat, clutching that fragile life, wrapping him in the wool scarf. Linda sat in the back, holding a water bottle but too afraid to open it, while Claire had the portable oxygen tank ready. Tanya pulled out her phone, dialing Dr. Evelyn Carter's emergency line. The sky suddenly growled. Dark clouds rolled in, as if even nature wanted to test whether we could reach safety before death caught us. The first drops of rain smacked against the windshield, the tires slipping just enough to make my heart seize. I looked down at him. His eyes were half closed, breaths shallow and fast. I whispered, "Valor, can you hear me? Don't give up. I'm here now." I didn't know why I called him that, but the name came out like a prayer. Tanya switched the phone to speaker. Dr. Carter's voice came steady yet urgent. "You're on your way?" Mike called back loudly. 10 minutes out." Patient's a Doberman pup, maybe a month old. Severe exhaustion, hypoglycemia, and dehydration. Shallow breathing. Slow heart. "Listen carefully," Dr. Carter said, words sharp as a scalpel. "Keep him warm. Get the O2 mask on right now. If you have glucose gel, rub some on his gums. If not, keep him awake with your voice. Don't let him slip under." Claire pressed the small O2 mask over the pup's muzzle. I steadied his head. Under the scarf, his chest fluttered like the wings of a drenched bird. Linda dug through her basket and pulled out a small packet of honey meant for pastries. "Will this do?" "Perfect." Tanya nodded. She squeezed a drop onto my finger. I touched it to his mouth, pleading softly, "Come on, Valor. Taste a little sweetness. This world isn't only bitter." 1 second. 2. Then his tongue flicked, slow but real. He licked. I felt his breath stretch just a little longer. Just a little. But it was like a ray of light breaking into a dark room. Outside, the rain lashed down like whips. Wipers thrashed furiously, but the world was still a blur. Mike gripped the wheel tightly, swerving to avoid a truck barreling past. The whole truck lurched. I clutched Valor closer, my heart ready to explode. "Keep him awake!" Claire shouted. I bent low, whispering like a plea. "Valor, there's so much I want to show you. Sunrises on a wooden porch, the smell of morning coffee, kids laughing as they play ball in the street. Don't leave me yet. You haven't felt what it means to be loved. Tanya spoke into the phone. Dr. Carter, he licked some honey. Breathing looked steadier, but still weak. The doctor's voice came firm. Good. Hold him for a few more minutes. We're prepping the ER. Drive straight to the back door. The team will be ready. Thunder tore across the sky. Linda clutched her chest, whispering a prayer. I hadn't prayed in years, but right then I prayed like a child. Each bump in the road sent the small body quivering in my arms. I tightened my hold, murmuring, "It's all right, kid. I've got you. Don't sleep. Don't leave me. 5 minutes." Mike shouted. I lifted my eyes. Rain blurred with tears until the street ahead dissolved, and only the glow of the clinic's neon lights broke through at the end of the road. Tanya pressed the phone to her ear. "Dr. Carter, we're here. Get the doors open." The truck skidded to a stop at the clinic's back entrance. The door swung wide, harsh white light spilling out, footsteps pounding. A team in lab coats was already waiting. "Bring the patient in." Dr. Carter's voice cut through the storm. I ran. Valor pressed to my chest. His body was light as ash, but hot, thrashing like a flame fighting not to die. My heart pounded like a war drum. For the first time in years, I felt both terror and absolute hope. I whispered, "Hold on, Valor. We've made it to the threshold of life. Don't stop now." And we stepped through the glowing glass doors, charging straight into the battle between life and death. The glass doors burst open, white light tearing through the darkness. I rushed in, clutching Valor against my chest, the wool scarf soaked through with rain, wrapped tight around his frail body. My heart hammered out of rhythm. Each shallow breath rattled inside me like a clock on the verge of stopping. "On the table, now!" Dr. Evelyn Carter's voice rang sharp, leaving no space for hesitation. I laid Valor on the cold steel table. His small frame shuddered, his eyes dull and wandering, as if nothing around him registered anymore. Claire pressed the small O2 mask to his muzzle. Mike held the tank steady, eyes reddened. Tanya tore open the medical kit while Linda stood by, her hands trembling around the wet scarf. "Temperature?" Dr. Carter demanded. 95 and dropping, Tanya replied, eyes locked on the monitor. "Blood glucose?" "Too low to register." "Jugular 4-line, diluted glucose 50, slow drip. Prep antibiotics, start active warming, hook up the cardiac monitor." Everyone snapped into motion. I stood at the head of the table, my old hands near Valor's ears, whispering, "Listen to me, kid. Just one more breath. I'm here. Don't leave me." The needle pierced his paper-thin vein. Valor shivered. The monitor flickered with a heartbeat. Beep, beep. Steady, then suddenly stretched into one flat line. The room froze. The shrill beep tore my chest apart. "Cardiac arrest!" Claire shouted. "Increase O2! Bag him! Epinephrine! Emergency dose!" Dr. Carter barked. Tanya slipped the tube, and Mike squeezed the bag. I nearly screamed, leaning to Valor's ear. "Valor! Hear me! I haven't shown you the sunrise yet. I haven't let you lie on a porch and smell coffee. Don't go. Don't leave me like this. 1 second. 2. Stretched into eternity." The only sound in the room was the roar of my heart breaking. Then, beep, beep, a beat. Another. The jagged wave returned. "We've got rhythm back!" Tanya cried, her eyes flashing hope. My knees buckled. Tears streamed down my face. I hadn't wept like that since the day my wife died. But now, they weren't tears of loss. They were tears of a small life clawing back from the edge. Dr. Carter pressed on. "Continue glucose. Wrap with heating blankets. Check lungs. Watch for aspiration." A quick X-ray lit the screen. Carter frowned, then exhaled. "Several rib fractures, but none punctured. fluid in the lungs, but it is reversible. He still has a chance. My shaking hand rested near Valor's head. I whispered, "Hear that, kid? They said you've got a chance. Don't let go again." Claire wiped sweat from her brow. Heart rate stabilizing. Breathing's weak, but steadier. Linda's eyes brimmed. "Look at him. He's still fighting." A tiny thing, fighting harder than we ever could. Dr. Carter nodded, her tone softening. "Yes, but now he needs quiet, patience. We've pulled him back from the edge, but the road ahead is long." I leaned close, my forehead brushing his. That fragile warmth against my skin felt like a miracle. "Valor," I whispered, "if anyone ever told you that you weren't worth living, forget it. I'm telling you, you deserve life. You deserve love. And I'll be here to prove it." Valor's clouded brown eyes flickered. Just a small movement, but enough for me to know. He heard. The weight in the room slowly eased. The monitor kept its slow, steadier rhythm. My hand stayed near his head, feeling every fragile breath. In that moment, I knew my life had turned onto a new road. A road tied to this small heartbeat. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside this white room, I saw it clearly. There are battles we cannot walk away from, and tonight, we won the first round in the fight to bring Valor back to life. The first 3 days after the emergency were a silent battle. Valor lay inside a small incubator, his frail body wrapped in heating blankets, an IV line fixed to his neck. Each time I looked through the glass, I saw a fragile life fighting second by second to hold on to this world. Dr. Carter told me plainly, "Mr. Green, we pulled him back from the abyss. But now is when patience matters most. He's weak, very weak. A single complication, and we could lose him." I nodded, my old hand gripping the cane tight. "I'll be here." However long it takes every morning, I sat in the clinic. Claire often stopped by before her night shift, carrying a cup of hot coffee for me. Linda brought little pastries, setting them on the waiting table. "So you'll have something to chew on while watching over him," she said, her voice catching. Mike and Tanya dropped in as well, checking his progress, quietly lending me their strength. On the 4th day, a miracle came. Dr. Carter removed the IV for a moment to try a spoonful of thin chicken broth. I sat close, heart about to split apart. Valor's small tongue flicked. Once, twice. Then he swallowed. I broke down in tears. "He ate. Dear God, he ate." Claire smiled, her eyes wet. "That's the first sign, Martin. He's choosing life." On the 5th day, Valor was set gently on the warm tile floor to attempt walking. His tiny legs trembled. 4 steps, then he collapsed. But to me, those 4 steps were nothing short of a revolution. I knelt, supporting his head, whispering, "It's all right, kid. We have a whole lifetime to learn how to walk again." Word spread through the neighborhood. People who had once looked away now came to the clinic, bringing old blankets, bags of food, even handwritten notes. One child knocked on the door, handing me a drawing of a small dog with wings. "I drew this for Valor." "So he knows he isn't alone," Linda whispered. "See, Martin? He's not just being saved. He's saving us, pulling the whole street out of indifference." I sat in silence, watching Valor sleep. His little body no longer looked so gaunt, his breathing deeper, his chest rising and falling slowly. Inside me, a truth flared. For more than 10 years, I had mistaken silence in an empty house for normal. I had convinced myself that loneliness was fate. But it wasn't. It was simply the absence of a life to love. One afternoon, as I sat beside the incubator, Valor opened his eyes and looked straight at me. This time, those cloudy brown eyes weren't empty. Something glimmered there, small, but unmistakable. He dragged himself closer to the glass, lifted his head, and leaned against it as if trying to reach me. I pressed my forehead to the cold pane and whispered, "Listen to me, Valor. From now on, you'll never have to cry alone again. Not ever." Tears spilled down my cheeks, but they were tears of relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't just existing. I felt a new thread binding me to life itself. Claire placed her hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Green, maybe Valor is saving you too." I looked back, smiling through tears. Not maybe. For certain. In that cold, white room, I realized something simple yet profound. Sometimes, to live again, you don't need a great miracle. You just need to hear a small cry, stop, and choose not to turn away. And for me, the day Valor lifted his head to meet my eyes was the day I stopped living in the past and began a new life. On the day I signed the adoption papers, my hands shook so badly my signature nearly blurred, but my heart had never been surer. The printed words read, "Valor Green." I looked at that name, my eyes brimming. It wasn't just a name for a dog. It was proof that, together, we had defied death, proof that courage could live inside the smallest body. That afternoon, Dr. Carter stepped out with the file in her arms and smiled. "Mr. Green, he's officially yours now." She rested a gentle hand on my shoulder. "And you know, you've been saved too." I cradled Valor in my arms. He was still small, but no longer fragile, his eyes clearer, brighter. He pressed his head against my chest, letting out a long sigh of relief, as if finally convinced the world would no longer abandon him. When we stepped out of the clinic, the sky was drenched in a golden sunset. The cool wind carried the damp scent of rain. Footsteps followed behind me. Linda, Claire, Mike, and Tanya. And then, the whole neighborhood was waiting at the gate. I froze. Children waved, holding crooked drawings of a dog with wings. Adults brought blankets, bags of food, and bouquets of flowers. Someone shouted, "Valor's coming home!" And the crowd erupted in applause. I lifted Valor higher so he could see. He blinked. Then, for the very first time, his little tail wagged. In that instant, the street exploded with cheers, clapping, tears, and his name was called out again and again. I saw Claire wipe her eyes, and Linda squeezed my hand. "Martin, you've given this whole neighborhood hope again." Back home, I set Valor down at the threshold. He stopped, gazing up at the wooden doorframe as if he couldn't believe it. Then he stepped forward, his legs shaky but determined. I followed, my heart pounding. The house that had been hollow for so long seemed to brighten with each of his steps. I had prepared a soft bed by the window, 2 brand-new bowls, and a small pillow embroidered with "Home Sweet Home." Valor sniffed every corner, then, instead of lying on the bed or pillow, he turned back, curled up right at my feet. He chose me. I knelt, wrapping my arms around his little body. "From now on," I whispered, "you'll never cry in silence again. This is home, and you, your family." In the days that followed, my house was no longer silent. Each morning, while I brewed coffee, Valor sat by the door, his round eyes fixed on the sunlight. When I opened it, he stepped onto the porch, lifting his head as if to drink in the sky. Every time I smiled, my heartbeat fell into rhythm with his breathing. Children knocked often. "Mr. Green, can Valor come out to play?" I'd pretend to be stern, saying, "Just for a little while." But inside, I was so happy I felt decades younger. Linda brought cakes, Claire brought fellow nurses, and the neighborhood treated Valor as a new emblem of resilience. One evening, I sat in my old armchair, Valor curled at my feet, I looked up at my wife's photograph on the wall, smiling through tears. Margaret, do you see? Our home has footsteps again, breath again, love again. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. Valor nestled against my legs, his steady breathing a lullaby. I knew then I hadn't just saved a life. I had found a reason to live again. And if you asked me what changed the life of a lonely 67-year-old man, I'd answer without hesitation. Just one small cry, enough to make me stop and listen. There are cries that, if we ignore them, we may never hear again. Valor once cried in silence, but today he has a home, love, and a new life. And I want to ask you, have you ever saved a dog's life? If you have, please share your story in the comments, because maybe your story will touch someone's heart, and another life will be given a chance. Let's spread love together, so no dog is ever abandoned and left alone in this world. And if Valor's journey touched your heart, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, every video is a warm embrace, a promise that love can change everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. I'll see you in the next journey, where love will once again write a miracle.